Okay, well, again, oh, yeah.
Just to make a comment, so initially identified in your mismatch negativity largely identified differences in the waveform in respect to your behaviorally inhibited children.
Right.
And then later you identify differences in activation of the amygdala. So is your argument one that it's this initial attention to specific factors in the environment that differ actually concatenate over time that leads to or permits the perpetuation of behavioral inhibition? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, so sorry that I wasn't clear about that. So I think that really the argument that I'd like to make, which I didn't make, is a developmental one, which is that the initial temperament that we think we are identifying at 4 months of age and that we can characterize more clearly in terms of behavioral inhibition at a year, 9 months in a year, is a result of this enhanced activation, amygdala activation and detection and response to novelty in the environment. But it is only through the interaction of those children in particular kinds of environments that then leads to the development of, for example, heightened attention bias to threat, and then subsequently the development of disorder. So it's a developmental process. Now, what factors there are in the environment that lead to this, let's say, enhanced attention bias to threat in these children, and then on to disorder, is currently a subject of great debate in my laboratory because there's a strong sentiment among a number of people in the lab that the patterns, for example, that the patterns of caregiving that children experience very early on exacerbates this initial disposition to respond to novelty and has a cascading influence, if you will, that leads to heightened attention bias, to attention to threat, and then later on to disorder or maladaptive behavior. So I apologize, I didn't really spell out the developmental story as well as I should have, but it is, in no way do I think that infants are born with an attention bias to threat. We think that what we've identified is this initial disposition based upon reactivity to novelty, and how you get from that point to attention bias and then on to disorder is obviously the important $64 question, and we think that it is in interaction with the environment that those, both in terms of caregiving and then probably later in terms of experiences with peers, that leads to that maladaptive behavior.
Is your argument also one that the environment, at least where behaviorally inhibited children are, is very stable across time?
No, so part of the issue you see is that, as I mentioned earlier, 50% of our behaviorally inhibited children no longer look inhibited at age 13. So there is stability within a subgroup of behaviorally inhibited kids, and the question is what's associated with that stability. We have a number of ideas about what that might be, but I think that's the important issue that keeps us coming to work every day. Yeah.
I just wondered, when you're talking about training to threat,
Yeah.
whether what you and your students might be speculating that actually looks like in early caregiving.
Sure. So there's actually there was a wonderful paper that I don't remember who was the first author, but Marion Sigmund was on the paper, and in which she looked at parent-child interaction, and she had 4 groups. She had parents who were anxious and children who weren't, parents who were not anxious and children that were, all of those different combinations. and she was looking at the quality and behaviors that were ongoing between the parents and the child. One of the things that is described in that paper is catastrophizing and an identification of what could be considered benign stimuli in the environment and identifying them as threatening. And so it would be great if in our observation of parent-infant and parent-child interaction, we find that, because that would sort of, fill that box in our thinking about that model in terms of how this initial aversive response to novelty gets enhanced and carried out within the parent-child environment. But we do think by the time children are engaging with peers, that they are expecting the worst, right? Okay, well then I think we can, Heidi, yes.
Well, do you think that children who do not start out with a given tendency could have experiences that would train these sorts of biases towards threat?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, this is only one pathway towards the development of social withdrawal and ultimately anxiety or anxiety disorders. It's a specific pathway for this temperament, but it by no means accounts for the wide range and variability that we see in terms of both children's behavior, in terms of social withdrawal and reticence, or in terms of anxiety disorders. Okay, well, thank you. Put my picture up here.
Well, I would like to thank both Dr. Rappe and Dr. Fox for their excellent talks today, and also remind you that we have 2 speakers tomorrow. Tomorrow we'll have some light breakfast foods here starting at 9, and the talks will begin at 9:30. And I'd also like to remind faculty that the dinner tonight at Bistro Sophia starts at 7 o'clock. And thank you again also audience members for your attention today and for coming from near and far. Thank you.